got run over by a truck in a triathlon in 1986 on the biking portion of a race. I broke 6 vertebrae in my spine, and I was told that I'd never walk again. And so the typical surgical procedure for multiple compression fractures with cord impingement is this surgery called Harrington rod surgery. And in my case, they were going to cut off the backs of parts of my vertebrae from the base of my neck to the base of my spine. And then they screw in these long stainless steel rods, and when you screw those rods into the vertebrae, it acts like a cantilever. It lifts the spinal column off the cord. But the prognosis was I probably wouldn't walk again, and that the surgery was hopeful that it would give me some relief. And I think if it was any other patient, Louis, besides me, I probably would have recommended the surgery, but this was me, you know?
Sure.
And I just couldn't rush into it. So I had 4 opinions, you know, from 4 of the leading surgeons in Southern California, and they were adamant that I needed this surgery.
All 4 of them?
All 4 of them. Yeah, in fact, the medical director of Scripps Hospital at the time was my surgeon. And he thought I had a head injury, or he thought, you know, that I had PTSD, that I wasn't just following his instruction. Anyway, I decided against the surgery, and I thought, well, listen, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. I'm basically laying face down. And I thought, well, there's an intelligence that's giving us life, that's keeping our heart beating and digesting our food. It really knows how to heal way better than me. This innate intelligence is what's giving us life. And I thought, well, if it's an intelligence, it's a consciousness. And consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention, so it must be paying attention to me. So I said, look, maybe I'll just spend the rest of my time trying to connect to this intelligence and give it a plan, give it a design, give it a template. And when I was really present and complete with that design, I would surrender this creation to this greater mind and allow it to do the healing for me. And the other thing I said is I'm not going to let any thought slip by my awareness that I don't want to experience. Now that sounds really easy, right? But when you're faced with crisis or trauma, we tend to focus on what we don't want to have happen instead of what we do want to have happen. So I started on this journey. I decided against the surgery, and it was a big revolution at the time. And I went through 6.5 weeks of hell. I just could not get my mind to do what I wanted it to do, because I'd start reconstructing my vertebrae and imaging an outcome, and then I'd start thinking, I'm going to be living in a wheelchair, or should I sell my practice?
So you were thinking about the way you wanted your body to look and feel in your mind.
I reconstructed every single vertebrae.
In the mind?
Yeah, in my mind. I wanted to show it exactly, 3-dimensionally. Yeah.
In your mind?
In my mind.
You're not drawing it out? Or
No, in my mind I was reconstructing.
You're visualizing it.
Yeah, visualizing it. And I wanted to say, look, take a look at that. Because this intelligence is always present, right? So we got to be present with it. So I'd start off reconstructing my spine, and then I'd be like, oh gosh, should I sell my practice? What if I live in a wheelchair?
And you practice chiropractic practice at the time?
Yeah, in Southern California, in La Jolla. So I couldn't get my mind to do what I wanted to do, and then after 6 weeks, I just went through the whole thing, and I felt like I hit a golf ball right in the sweet spot. Something clicked, and from that point forward, what took me 2.5 or 3 hours to do, I was able to do in 45 minutes. I was firing and wiring, you know, these new circuits, and I was practicing paying attention. And then all of a sudden, I started noticing dramatic changes in my health like this. And the moment I started noticing changes in my body, what was going on outside of me, I started correlating at what I was doing inside of me. Now I was just hooked, and I just started doing it with more passion and more sincerity. Anyway, back on my feet in 10.5 weeks, back training at 12 weeks, back in my clinic, and I just made a deal with myself that if I was ever able to walk again, I'd spend the rest of my life studying the mind-body connection and mind over matter. And then that led me to just stop everything in my life. I just wasn't the same guy. I'd just been initiated into something, and sold my practice, sold my home.
You sold it all?
Sold it all, moved to the Northwest, and just started asking bigger questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What are we doing? What happens when we die? And how did all this happen for me? What was the process? So I started studying the science behind it, and I couldn't find it in any conventional textbooks, because this was unconventional, right? And miraculous is kind of unconventional. So I started studying quantum physics and neuroscience and epigenetics, and it started making sense. I started building this model of understanding. Then I asked the fundamental question, has anybody else done it? So then I traveled to 17 different countries and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people with serious health conditions that were treating either conventionally or unconventionally. They were staying the same or getting worse, and all of a sudden they got better. So what was the cause that produced the effect, you know? And the stories and what I learned was so amazing. I went back to school and studied neuroscience, because mind was such a strong element. It wasn't diet, it wasn't celibacy, it wasn't any of those things. It was just really this element. And so then I was able to figure out that there were 4 common things. And then I wrote a book about it, and then I thought, God, if this works really on people that were sick and are better, and they come from all walks of life, all colors, all races, all genders, sexual preferences, but all of a sudden, I wanted to see if I was able to reproduce it. So then I started seeing, okay, let's see if we can teach this, be able to reproduce the outcome, because that's science, right? So I went through about...
What were the 4 common things?
The first one was that they all believed and accepted that there was an intelligence that lived within them that was giving them life. These are people with cancer, MS, lupus, Parkinson's disease.
Who got better?
Yeah, just spontaneously. It's called a spontaneous remission.
So they believed there was an intelligence.
There was some invisible life force that they were connected to, that they felt like they had lost their connection to. They became separate and disconnected from. And that when they got the diagnosis, they woke up and said, man, I got to connect again, and I got to connect to my essence. And so they developed a relationship with it, just like you develop a relationship with anybody.